Imagine a world where our interactions aren't driven by dominance, hierarchies, or fear-based thinking. A world where we've transcended the need to control others and instead embrace the beauty of surrender. Today, we're exploring this profound shift in consciousness, moving beyond the patterns that have shaped human history towards something more authentic and spiritually aligned. I'm Mark Roach, and welcome to Transcendent, where we journey through the full spectrum of human experience, inspiring common people to find their power in unexpected places. For millennia, human civilization has operated within the frameworks of dominance and fear. From boardrooms to battlefields, from religious institutions to family structures, we've created systems that perpetuate power struggles and hierarchical thinking. As I reflect on my own journey, having spent over 20 years practicing intermittent fasting and extended fast, including 5-day fast, 7 and 14 days on occasion, as well as profound periods of extended silence for nearly a month, I've gained unique insights into these patterns. Having occupied leadership positions in business, community organizations, athletics, I've witnessed firsthand how our ongoing narratives manipulate and control. What's fascinating is that within each narrative of dominance, there's usually an exception mentioned, a hook that, if truly grasped, would completely negate everything that follows. Yet we continue promoting patterns that lead to dominance, war, and violence with mere allusions to spirituality or some vague afterlife. One of the greatest challenges in transcending dominance and fear is our language itself. As Alan Watts might well point out, our Western vocabulary is built upon Greek and Latin foundations that inherently support dualistic, hierarchical thinking. This language makes it extraordinarily difficult to communicate experiences of unity and surrender. Our words become barriers to the very transcendence that we seek. We're constantly trying to create new institutions to replace old ones, yet these new structures inevitably adopt the same framework as the systems they aim to replace. That reminds me of a joke that perfectly captures this futility. A man and his wife are stranded on an island for years, and when rescuers finally arrive, they notice that there's 3 buildings. The survivor explains that one is their home, another is their church, and the third, well, that's where they used to go to church. This joke brilliantly outlines our endless efforts to create spiritual vocabularies and platforms within a world destined toward dominance and violence. We cannot script the transcendence of duality, which rule sets or narratives that conform to the binary, polarized physical world that we inhabit. Modern neuroscience supports this understanding. Research shows a profound disconnect between what we believe that drives our decisions and what actually does drive them. As studies by neuroscientists like Moran Cerf demonstrate, our verbal explanations for our choices are often completely unsupported by experimental evidence. We construct post hoc rationalizations for behaviors that were actually driven by subconscious processes. Our conscious mind is essentially manufacturing explanations based on past experiences rather than accurately reporting our decision-making process. This explains why focus groups consistently fail to predict consumer behavior and why we remain trapped in patterns of dominance despite our best intentions. We simply don't understand ourselves as well as we think we do. This disconnect relates to what Carl Jung called the shadow, those aspects of ourselves we've denied or repressed. When we operate from fear and dominance, we're often projecting our unacknowledged shadow material onto others. As Jung would suggest, and as I've discovered through decades of therapy and self-observation, integrating the shadow aspect is essential for genuine spiritual growth. Only by acknowledging our capacity for dominance and fear can we begin to transcend them. Self-observation becomes a crucial practice in this journey beyond dominance and fear. Not the intellectual understanding of self-observation, but its lived practice, becoming aware of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors without judgment or interference. This creates what Maurice Nicoll called the observing eye, a neutral witness to our automatic reactions. Through this practice, we begin to separate from our conditioned responses, creating space between stimulus and response where true freedom lies. As we observe ourselves with compassion, we notice how often our reactions stem from fear or a desire to dominate. We see the patterns that have been running on autopilot, many originating in childhood trauma or cultural conditioning. The alternative to dominance and fear is not weakness or submission, it's surrender. True surrender isn't about giving up or giving in. It's about releasing our grip on the illusion of control. In my own journey, I've experienced profound moments of transformation through surrender. When I was fired from a billion-dollar company I started by people I had even hired, I had access to a weapon, but I chose to smile instead. I recognized that of a higher calling beyond retaliation or dominance. This wasn't weakness, but transcendence. Recognizing that my identity wasn't tied to material success or position. It was an opportunity to align with something greater than the ego's need for vindication. Moving beyond dominance and fear requires us to transcend binary thinking itself. In traditional religious contexts, we often see Satan or darkness portrayed solely as evil. Yet, a deeper understanding reveals that darkness can also be a teacher. As explored in esoteric traditions, the figure of Satan or the adversary can be seen as a necessary counterpoint to divine light. Without experiencing contrast, there can be no discernment. The teacher of darkness helps us distinguish light by showing us its absence. William Blake captured this when he wrote, "Without contraries is no progression." The energy of rebellion and creativity, when properly understood, drives human growth and self-awareness. Perhaps our greatest teachers in transcending dominance and fear are children. They possess an innate wisdom that hasn't yet been overwhelmed by fatherly warnings and materialistic fears. As we learn to transcend dominance-based thinking, we can allow this innate knowing in our children to flourish. We can stop perpetuating the fear-based yearnings of old men and embrace the purity and naivete of trusting ourselves to move forward. How do we practically move beyond dominance and fear in our daily lives? Number one, practice stillness. Through meditation, fasting, periods of silence, create space to observe your conditioned patterns without judgment. Two, question narratives. When you encounter a story of dominance or fear, look for the exception, the hook that might negate the entire framework. Three, embrace vulnerability. True strength comes not from dominating others, but from courage to be vulnerable and authentic. Four, cultivate compassion. See others not as competitors or threats, but as expressions of the same life force that animates you. Five, surrender daily. Practice letting go of outcomes. trusting in something larger than your individual ego. The evidence of our futility in planning and structuring the future continues to unfold, defying our attempts at control. Our Greek and Latin-based languages of dominance and violence robs us of our spirituality at its core. Yet there is hope. As we learn to transcend these patterns, we discover a power that has been promised by the ancients in our spiritual traditions. We find that true power lies not in dominance over others, but in surrender to what is. By embracing this path, we can stop repeating the fear-based and dominance-based yearnings that have shaped human history. We can trust ourselves to move forward into a new paradigm, one based on interconnection, compassion, and the recognition of our shared divinity. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you the courage on your journey beyond dominance and fear toward the beauty of surrender.